I started at 17 doing, I sang a song, I won a radio contest when I was 17 singing a song about bondage. I was 17.
Yeah.
I had a guitar. Why would I be singing that? Something's wrong with me.
But after the gazillions of dollars and the attention of Full House, did you think maybe I should straighten this up and go a little...
I felt like I
friendly?
was a little, if you ever saw Full House, constrained. Just a tad. I felt that there was one time I was getting the Jew of the Year award in Philadelphia. It was called not Jew of the Year. It was called Jewish Young Man of the Year or something. I don't think they would have put Jew of the Year.
In Berlin, they might have, but...
And then this book would have been burned.
Right.
That's not
Separate
nice.
issue.
That's not good.
Sorry, I apologize to all the Germans in the audience.
Okay, let's get back to
Anyway, where were you?
Let's tear up the questions like Craig Ferguson. So I was getting this lovely award that I have. I keep it in my special Jew box. No, come on, I'm Jewish. I'll show you in a few minutes.
It also has water and canned food in case you have to crawl into it in case they ever come again. Is that it? All of our grandparents had that box.
Oh my God. Toomey makes them now. So, and they have wheels so you can get through the airport quickly. Wheelie bag.
Right, but actually, all the Jewesses pay for the
baby
Louis
in it.
Vuitton. Yeah.
I'm sorry, what?
They all pay for the Louis Vuitton. All right, go ahead.
There's so many things I'm thinking of that we can't say now. I can't believe Life is Beautiful got made when you think about that.
True.
Right. All right.
So anyway, so we're back to...
We'll be right back after this.
So the darkness thing. I mean, were you worried about that?
Actually, at this award thing, she said, "Are you frustrated by being on Full House?" And at that time, Full House was like number 7, and the video show was number 1. These are gifts you don't complain about. And I was about to receive this thing, and she's a syndicated writer, and she's wise because she got me in a vulnerable moment. And I just went, "Oh yeah, it is, and it is frustrating sometimes, but I'm lucky to have the job." Saget frustrated by Full House, and it's 75 newspapers, and I went to lunch with my producer, and he's like, "What is this?" I was like, well, "I'm not, I'm not a communist, apparently." It was like, it was a McCarthy hearing, and I said, "Well, it is a little frustrating sometimes. I mean, I'm the straight guy on the show, and he can't be straight. I mean, he lives with 2 guys in San Francisco, so." And it was just something that kind of made me think, just keep your mouth shut and be careful what you say, because I was 33, and there's a smugness that comes with making money and being on TV, and they're not always great gifts when your id gets bigger than your talent, which is often if you're narrating a show where people get hit in the nuts every day. And so I was constrained at home. I paid a woman, and my duct tape bill was so big for a year. How's it?
All right, we're trying to stay on the rails here. So the question is this.
Right, yes.
Did you decide after the success of Full House
Right.
that you needed to change the act at all because there was a whole other audience out there?
None of it was a decision. None of it was ever. People would always say, "Oh, he's redefining himself. Oh, he's..." And I didn't even look at that, but then you hear about it, like shock comic, and it's like, no. And I did go too far. I thought on my special that song, the old English folk song, which some guy wrote, and he passed away, so there's no royalties. It's pretty amazing.
Perfect.
But that special, my dad had just passed away, like a couple months before it. And I cried during the special talking about him, and I just dropped the F-bomb a lot on that special, more than I have. The last one I did, my Grammy-nominated special, I only said it like, I don't know, you can't make a drinking game out of it. It was like 7 times or 8 times or something, because I'm trying not to use it as a verb. But in the other one, I just was like a rim shot. I just kept doing it. And I've talked to people about it, and Louis C.K. said on this comedy special that Ricky Gervais hosted that it is a nervous thing. It's a fearful thing if you're going to drop it, and and mine was boom, 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 because I was an all-college audience. I'm not making excuses. I'm just knowing why I did it. It was an NYU audience, and they were... It seemed to be an easier laugh to go to it. And I liked the special. I was very proud of it. It had a ton of material, and I worked my ass off to do it. Don Rickles is a friend of mine. That's the best name I can drop. He's my friend. Let me get that.
I get it out of the way. But
And he came up to me, and after he saw it, and he said, and I directed him in this movie, Dirty Work. So I'm 10 years ago. He said, if I'd known you were going to be such a good director for me, I would have used you again. I don't know why. I would have gotten closer with you. But now we're pretty close. And he said, I saw your special on HBO last night. He goes, you left out 2 fucks.
well, Richard Pryor always said that he used it as percussion, right? I mean, that's the thing. It's jazz, and he used that just as percussion. Do you think it was more fear for you, or is it?
That rings true for me too. But in my self-loathing side, self-critical side of myself, I would say it came out of fear. But I do look at my stand-up as a jazz kind of thing. And I never do the same set, which is really difficult to edit. Because my last special, I did a couple shows, and you try to cut them together, and there's nothing that even remotely matches.
That's true of all comedy specials, by the way. The guy has to wear the same stuff every night.
Well,
right?
Chris Rock did a definable one, which was an HBO one where he wore different outfits, and you saw the same hand gesture, and they would go from Africa to New York City, and his arm was here, and he continued the bit. And it's amazing to behold, whether it took you out of it or not. It's still that's choreographed, incredible stand-up at a heightened level.
Who do you think right now, working right now, is the best? I mean, obviously, you grew up on Pryor, loved Pryor, worked with Pryor. There's Rodney Dangerfield, who was just as you described. He described himself as a tank, right?
Yeah, he said you got to go like a tank. Just don't. And he didn't. His career didn't start till he was. Well, it started. He had 3 names. He was Jacob Cohen, then he became Jack Roy, and then he became Rodney Dangerfield. And Rodney Dangerfield didn't really hit until he was 59 years old when he got a big part in Caddyshack. He was 59 when he did Caddyshack.
Yeah,
that's amazing. I was saying before, Louis C.K. for me is definably one of the best people. I think Kevin Hart is astonishing. He tells a story. He's speaking from here. He's funny. He's charming. He's a good person, and it's gigantic. I mean, he makes concert films. I mean,
because it's interesting. You talk to guys. David Brenner just passed away a couple of weeks ago.
He's a good man.
And David Brenner and
Did you
Jerry
know him?
Seinfeld, I did, and he was a friend, just as close as
I'm
you are
sorry.
to me. Yeah, Jerry Seinfeld and all those guys, they all kind of Jay Leno, they all came together, and it's kind of interesting. You tell a story in your book about how close comics are, and they came to the birth of your first daughter, and what's interesting to me is that there were 10 guys, and now there's thousands of people who aspire to be in the business or try to be in the business, whether it's through YouTube or small clubs and things like that, and it's so hard to really be the guy, right?
There aren't that many people. There's thousands of people. There's clubs. You look at the chains. You look at the Laugh Factory here. You look at the Improv chain here and everywhere all over the country. And I'm going to Australia next month. I'm performing a Live Nation tour in theaters, but it's a comedy festival, so there's a lot of people. There are 500 people throughout the country that are Australian comedians.
Wow.
Jim Jeffries is doing it, but he's an established and a funny and a blue comedian and a good guy. But there aren't that many that have their own voice, that don't sound like other people. Like, I've watched comedians, they say, why don't you have this person work with you? And they're doing Bill Hicks material. They're doing
the great Bill Hicks, who had a Chicago
Bill Hicks
connection,
was an amazing comedian, died really young. We've been losing a lot of people. We lost John Panette last week. He's 50 years old, this guy.
right?
In a lot of pain, a lot of pain. He had a lot of devils, a lot of people. And so I've had so many comedians I loved, but there's a lot of really interesting new people too. B.J. Novak's a friend of mine. He wrote a really good book called One More Thing, and it's really good. And
Do you think the way to comedy now is through television, is through hitting on a sitcom or hitting on whether it's Saturday Night Live or a sitcom or some other way?
Yeah.
Is that the only way to really get that sort of critical mass like Gravity?
It's unless you're a new defining stand-up, and that doesn't happen a lot, but someone goes, watch this person, and then you see them, and someone gives them a special. And a lot of it is they get one made through sometimes Netflix, but most of the time they're farmed out by someone who will fund them. And there's a lot of people that are good, and I laugh at them. But and I love seeing a comedian that's new, that's funny and has an original voice and isn't just trying to become a star, that just wants to be funny.
How is it that kids going into rehab and all that stuff that today the stars are having trouble dealing with their celebrity? Why was it good for your kids?
Well, it's when I was a kid watching television, we didn't have the tabloid stuff. You didn't have everything we have now. Now it's completely out there, and people just went away. And on the Donna Reed show, it was Paul Peterson who was the son, and he has been an advocate for exactly what you're talking about, and trying to protect kids that are young actors on television and in film for going to Pleasure Island in a Pinocchio sense, because they went into this world where the actors and actresses had their demons, and they just got into it. And because when the shows end, when they're not on anymore, this giant void is there. And for an adult, you can hopefully find something to segue into. But for a kid, there you are at 11, 14, 16, and while you're going through it or when it ends, where do you get that kind of affection that you got in a huge way that maybe you got or didn't get from your family or your parents, whether you did or not? We all see cases where people do come from loving parents. I know kids that had problems that are actors who have loving parents, good parents, but things happen because being a kid, things happen from anywhere.
Bieber.
Was that Tourette's? Did you just yell that out?
Bieber.
Were you
Son of a bitch, Bieber.
Oh, you saying Bieber?
Yeah, Bieber.
Oh, I thought you just yelled that Beaver for no reason.
I do. I have that too.
To counter that, testicles. But I think there is more awareness of it now. So that's one. I guess the negative is it's nobody's business, and you want the family to take care of the person. If there's not a family, you want their close group to help a person and for them to help themselves. But the advantage of it is it's so prevalent everywhere and everywhere with every kid that going into that kind of a program, if you can go into it, can save a kid's life. And it's happened a lot. I've seen a lot of people recently that are young adults that I know from shows we've all seen that are adults now that are going, wow, I really went through it. It's good to see you. And they talk to me because I'm Dirty Daddy.
That's the worst plug for the book I've ever
There's
heard.
Wait. There's a middle chapter where I'm lost for a while, where it's called Things I Shouldn't Have Done, where I was, I wrote it in a weird way. It's kind of a confessional, and it becomes that if you do a book like this, if you have any kind of memoirs or whatever. And I wasn't planning to do it, but it's a good Just Say No chapter, and it's upsetting. The first people I gave the book to was my 3 daughters, who love it, which makes me really happy, and they get more money now. I paid them to love it, so I could say that. And their mom, I gave it to her first, and then I gave it to, let my mother read it. My mother, who passed away just a couple months ago, read about 111 pages of it, and then said, I can't read it anymore. And she was about to get to the chapter called Things I Shouldn't Have Done. And by not reading that chapter, I think she was able to live a little longer. And then I gave it to all the kids. I gave it to, not the kids, the adults. I gave it to Ashley, Mary Kate, Jody, Candace, Dave, and John. I didn't know Dave can read. Dave's...
None of us did.
It's available on tape and downloadable, but Dave said, no, I'm going to read it. You need a bookmark? Nope. I'll just smudge it. I love Howie Mandel. Well, I started kind of with him. He was in Toronto. He came out of Toronto exactly when I started. So he was 1978. He was in Toronto, and I was at the Comedy Store in L.A. And so he was already headlining in Toronto, and then he moved to L.A., and then he got discovered at the Comedy Store and ended up on St. Elsewhere. And then I was back in Toronto, and Howie and I would hang out and go to dinner. And I just did his show because I couldn't say no to him. Because I do these Scleroderma Research Foundation benefits, and comedians do them all the time for me. And Howie's done it a few times. So some people you just can't say no to when they do things nice for you. So I'm on his show on TBS called Deal With It. I did 2 episodes of it, and I don't like hazing shows where you do practical pranks on people or something, and they wear a headset, and you tell them what to do. And to promote this book, it'll be on, I think, next week, I got a guy all he said to his girlfriend, or not even his girlfriend, during lunch was, "I can't get this book out of my head. It's called Dirty Daddy." He said, you got to read Dirty Daddy. She said, "What are you talking about?" And he goes, "Dirty Daddy." And I just said, "Just keep saying Dirty Daddy." So the guy keeps going, "Dirty Daddy, Dirty Daddy." And I said, "Howie, this is terrible." He says, "Do it. It's funny. You'll plug your book." So, "Dirty Daddy, Dirty Daddy." And then he went under the table. He said, "Come under the table with me." And she goes, "Why?" I don't want to ruin it for you, but he says, "Come under here. I want to talk to you about Dirty Daddy." It's really, I'm friends with him. He's a really funny, incredibly spontaneous, really good at working a room of people and bringing everybody into it. That's his whole act, and it's a la Rickles too. I mean, it's that Rickles is kind of an influence for a lot of people in that way. I have an off switch. I stopped talking at a point. When I'm with my daughters, or I'm with myself, because I have a very big pool. I take vacations by myself, and I just don't do anything. I try to get in touch, do all that stuff, do woo-woo crap, yoga, bend in half. Someone's under me while I do that. I don't work alone. I have a flatbed. Her name is Hilda. What? That's not even anything. That's nothing. But
okay,
yeah,
timing.
Jeff Altman used to have a hairdryer by his bed and keep it on at night because he couldn't sleep. Very funny guy, Jeff Altman. Very, very funny. Had the Jonathan Winters gene. I got to work with Jonathan Winters, and he gave me a piece of advice because he did have an off switch. When I visited him and I saw him in Santa Barbara and had lunch with him once, and he was very quiet and depressed because he would talk about it, that he was, sometimes they send me to woohoo, because he had clinical depression. And one time he apparently climbed naked up the mast of a ship in Santa Barbara and talked about it on talk shows. And said, "Well, they had to take care of me when I did that." And I don't know why I did a Carson impression, but that's good stuff. But Jonathan Winters was on America's Funniest Home Videos once. They brought him out to surprise me as Santa Claus. And I'm on stage doing the video show, and the options for jokes hosting a clip show that was YouTube clips, basically, before YouTube, is very limited, the kind of comedy you can do. It's really one kind of comedy. It's a pun, or it's nothing. It's just, weddings are great. Let's look at them. Or dogs can be great. I wouldn't leave the house either. Here we go. And so there's only so many ways to narrate getting hit in the nuts. And Daniel Tosh does it really well, and Rob Dyrdek does it really well. But Jonathan, I'm standing next to him. He's dressed as Santa Claus. He starts with 5 to 7 minutes that are just killer. I mean, he's just ad-libbing, tapes rolling. It's definitely not live. He just keeps going. He did it for 40 minutes until there was no response from anybody. And he's dressed as Santa Claus. The sweat's pouring off of him. And we know we got it already because he's Jonathan Winters. And it was just amazing. They used 2 minutes. It's national TV. At the very end of it, I said some stupid pun. And because he had been gotten to a negative place at the end, he looked at me and he said, "You can do much better than that." And he was right. But I didn't say to him, "Look, you're a genius, but I think you just bombed, didn't you?" I bombed a lot on that show, and you could tell by my eyes begging the camera to take me home.
Do you? I wonder this because this Tom Bergeron's still hosting that show.
He quit. No, he didn't quit. I guess it's over.
Shouldn't he quit that show? I mean,
well, he's done.
They're done now.
They're done with him.
Because
or he's done with them. I don't know how it ended. It's like a relationship. I broke it off. She broke it off. I don't know how it ended. I know that he and I are going to dinner.
To make amends for
No, he
being
just
the
wants to buy me
ex-wives?
dinner because I pretty much gave him everything he has.
True.
He said we call the show the annuity.
Well, how did that show survive in the YouTube era? I mean, anybody can watch that stuff.
And it is. It talks soup and well, it's everything. It's all over the web. I mean, sports, news shows, news with their sports is those best sports bloopers. There's only so many going around, and everybody runs them. So yeah, that was the issue. He was great at it. I thought he was the perfect person to do it because he didn't try to hit you with stuff. I was trying to make a comedy show out of it, and I was 30 years old.
He's just the traffic cop, right?
And he likes it. He likes doing it the way he did. He's very honest with how he did it, and he's a really great guy, really good man.
I would like to ask one last question, actually to get a reaction from each of you, because we're in a broadcast museum, and we're at a point in American television history where there is a rather significant sea change in the evolution of late-night television.
Yes.
And it's very contemporary. It's happening right now. I'd like to get your assessment about that evolution, about some of the changes that are coming up in following Dave Letterman, whether or not, Colbert can make it as Colbert as opposed to the character that he plays, and just the overall feeling of where things are in late night and where late night might go.
Well, what's really exciting is not this many eyes have been on late night in a long time. And all of the shows, the ratings for all of it has become gigantic. I even say in the book that Stephen Colbert I have a man crush on because, I've been told that I look like three people. There's doppelgangers in life. It's Anthony Weiner, Bill Nye the Science Guy, and Stephen Colbert. So when I look in the mirror, I want to see Stephen Colbert's reflection. I want to hear his voice. I just think he's incredibly brilliant. And this character that he's done it doesn't even happen what he's done, and as you've seen, because it's a character. And I think it made sense to me. I mean, it seemed like a wonderful thing. David Letterman is definably, I was on Johnny Carson's show a lot coming up. Johnny Carson was the king to me. I knew Steve Allen. I used to write letters with him.
Would you write a letter and he'd write a song back to you?
His letters were long. He could write a song he would talk about comedy forever.
Yeah.
And he would write a song.
Yeah. He
Boy.
wrote a song every day, he said.
He did.
Yeah.
A couple of them were good, like really good.
Yeah, I think two that were like big
He wrote the
hits.
theme song to his show. The answer to your question is, Fallon is kicking ass. It's unbelievable what he's doing. So and Seth Meyers went right into the fold. Jimmy Kimmel is a friend, and he's brilliant and he's wonderful. Craig Ferguson's a friend. We have the same birthday. I'm excited by it, and I look at it as good for television. I think people are sleeping less, which isn't great for people. But if they can't sleep right at this moment, everybody I know is switching. They're just watching, and they want to see what Dave does as he starts to gracefully bow out. It's the same thing. Johnny Carson was 30 years. Mm-hmm. It's the same. I guess that's the longest historically, I believe,
right, that
you can do that. I think it's exciting that we haven't just switched over to just watching something on the internet yet. And
Ro, how would you handicap those that are in place right now,
well,
long term?
It's interesting because we've talked about this a little bit on the air. The issue is you've got talent. They're all very different talents. You've got Jimmy Kimmel, who his talent really is the staff around him. He's a very good driver of the show. He's very funny. He's a great interviewer. If you haven't watched the show, he's very good with guests. He's almost, Carson is the best at all of it. But as an interviewer, he's very good. And Craig Ferguson is also an excellent interviewer. Letterman tends to be good, but loses patience quickly. I'm familiar. And but what's really interesting is that late night television has become very bit driven. So Kimmel's thing is really about bits and about getting on the internet and having things go viral and bringing that audience back to television. Fallon is a pure entertainer. He's a singer, he's a dancer, he's a comedian, and he's going to use all of those skills, hit all those notes. I think what you're going to see happen with Colbert is Colbert's he's not going to play the character of Colbert, but it's going to be a little smarter. It's going to kind of niche to a little older audience. It doesn't matter. People are now in broadcast selling not so much 20, 54-year-old adults, which they did traditionally forever. Now they're selling mindsets a little bit. And so I think they're going to sell a little bit smarter show with Colbert coming out of New York, or even potentially out of D.C., which would be kind of an interesting opportunity. I mean, there's an option for that. So I see this as sort of this is the greatest moment. I mean, we sit here in this great museum. This is maybe the golden era of television right now, because on paid television, you have some of the best one-hour dramas ever made, if not the best one-hour dramas ever made. Some of the best comedy is coming out on cable, and even broadcast is now having to live up to that. ABC passed on The Sopranos, and everybody in broadcast television at that point said, we've got to change what we're doing. So there's an incredible amount of talent out there, and I think it's just going to be very, very, very fun to watch. I don't know who's going to win it. I think Fallon probably has the best chance of winning it, sort of broad audience.
Rokon from WLS Radio. Bob Saget, thank you very much from Dirty Daddy.
Thank you for having us
Thank you
here.
very
It's an
much.
honor.
Delight to have you with us. And again, we're talking about the history of late night television. I want to remind everyone who is watching this on the internet that on June 21st, we will be honoring one of the true icons. We will be saluting Dick Cavett. He will be coming here live for our benefit, and we hope you can join us. And again, Bob Saget, Rokon, thank you for being with us tonight from the Museum of Broadcast Communications.
Thank you all for coming, or however you reacted.